I have a question to ask you guys. I'm going to give my thoughts on this issue, on this theory, I should say. And then I want to get your guys' feedback on this, right? I was pondering something just today, talking to a good friend of mine. I wonder what would have happened had Michael Jordan, considered by many of the game's greatest player as far as professional basketball is concerned, what if, when he was cut from his varsity team in high school, what if he decided to quit basketball? What if that rejection was so strong and he didn't have that killer competitive instinct at that time to prove the coach and everyone else wrong? What if he just decided, you know what, this isn't worth it. I'm going to focus my energies into something else. Forget basketball, I'm done with it. How would that one decision by a teenager in North Carolina will have completely altered the NBA landscape in the 80s and 90s? Have you ever wondered about that? It's a very interesting scenario. It's an interesting thing to ponder because, for one, the legacies of so many players would have changed in some form or fashion. Michael Jordan wouldn't have gone on to be a star at Laney High. He wouldn't have gone on to the University of North Carolina and win a championship there and become a star in his own right. And he wouldn't have gone to the NBA and perform at levels that we've just never seen before. Excuse me, LeBron James fans. All due respect to him, I still think Jordan is just a level above LeBron. I'm sorry. But anyway, what would have happened? Well, I think it's obvious that the Chicago Bulls would have stayed probably a doormat in the Eastern Conference. Um, I even wonder whether or not in the '87 draft, whether the Bulls organization would have made the trade for Scottie Pippen. Maybe they would have. Uh, but I really don't see the Bulls winning any championships if Michael Jordan's not there. Um, there definitely would have been uh, this drive for championships to build players around Jordan. It would have been more of a, well, how can we sell tickets this year type thing with Reinsdorf and Krause, who probably wouldn't have lasted in his job as long as he did. Krause being the arrogant asshole that he was, who thought that he was a genius, and the only reason he won championships because of Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, Dennis Rodman, and the like. But anyway, let's look at individual players. How will their legacies be different? Let's start with Patrick Ewing. Now, this is just my thoughts on this. I think if Patrick Ewing had played in the league without Michael Jordan, he may be the one guy who still may not have won a championship. I think his best shot at winning a championship, because instantly you think of the '94 um, finals against the Houston Rockets, and they didn't get it done. Michael Jordan wasn't the obstacle then, having retired. 1993, they would have went to the NBA Finals uh, against the Phoenix Suns. I think it would have been a hell of a series. I don't think they would have beaten Phoenix. Me personally, I don't think they would have beaten Phoenix Suns. It actually took a superhuman effort for Michael Jordan for the Bulls to beat the Suns. I mean, the guy had to put up 41 points a game to beat that offensively loaded team, very talented team. I don't think that. I just don't think that New York could have beaten that team. I think the best shot for Ewing to win a championship may have been the 1992 New York Knicks team. And I agree with Bruce Brits on his website. Uh, you guys should check it out, subscribe to his website as well as to his channel. He considers the 1992 New York Knicks to have the best perimeter defense of all time, and he has a lot of evidence to back that up. And I agree with him. That team probably has the best perimeter defense in NBA history. I think that team probably would have beaten Portland in the NBA Finals had they faced them. And let's be honest, uh, Chicago may have gotten a little bit of a gift that year as far as officiating in the Eastern Conference semifinals. That was their real conference finals. Cleveland was the conference finals, but New York was the true test. But I think Patrick Ewing, if he won a championship, it might have been in 1992. Let's talk. Let's focus on Charles Barkley, who was on that Phoenix Suns team that I talked about earlier. I think Charles would have won a championship in 1993 if Michael Jordan never played in the NBA. I think that was his one shot. Uh, there's no other avenues where Michael Jordan only blocked him from the championship. Um, let's go with Reggie Miller. Uh, I think that that Pacers team in 1998 may have may have beaten Utah. That would have been a hell of a series. The Chicago Jazz series was a hell of a one in '98. That would have been a hell of a series. I even remember Scottie Pippen saying that he thought that Indiana Pacers team was better than the Bulls team. The Bulls really had to gut down and play exemplary basketball to beat that team because they were more talented on paper than the Bulls. That probably was the least talented of all the championship Bulls teams of the 90s. And I think had Michael Jordan not played basketball, perhaps Reggie Miller won his one championship in 1998 against the Utah Jazz. Speaking of Utah, let's talk about John Stockton and Karl Malone. Well, if I say I think that they may have lost in '98, well, when do I think they would have won? Well, I think they probably won a championship in 1997. Had there been no Michael Jordan in the NBA, I think they would have played, I think they would have faced an Orlando Magic team still with Shaquille O'Neal. But I think that Utah team would have been hungry. Uh, Karl Malone was still near the prime of his career, really the prime of his career still. He was a guy who had a long prime. And he was the MVP that year. I don't know whether he's still the MVP, but let's just say everything just stays the same. I think they beat the Orlando Magic in the finals. I think Karl Malone and John Stockton won their one and only championship. Now, many of you, good with history, will say, Mike, whoa, now. What do you mean the Orlando Magic? Shaq left in '96. Well, I want to say something about that. I think if Michael Jordan never retired, I think the Orlando Magic would have won a championship in 1996. This was that team with Shaq, Penny, Horace Grant, Dennis Scott, Nick Anderson, John Concack, Joe Wolf. Remember that guy? you know, different other players on the bed. A really good bench. I think, what was the guy named? Anthony Bowie, Donald Royal, John Concack, if I haven't said him. Different individuals on that team. And Brian Shaw. And I think if they played the Seattle Supersonics in 1996, as great defensive team as Seattle was, I think Shaq would have been just too fucking much for Seattle Supersonics. Too much. Irvin Johnson just could not deal with that guy, man. And I think they would have won a championship. And I think if Shaq had won a championship with the Magic in '96, he stays. If I remember correctly, Orlando just didn't match the salary demand, the salary offer for LA. But I think a championship would have enticed Shaq to stay at least a little longer, in Orlando. And I think that Shaq would have won an additional championship to the ones that he won later with the Lakers. I think he still would have left Orlando because that just wasn't his type of town. I think he would have stayed longer. And perhaps Shaq wins 5 championships instead of 4. And there's some other things you have to look at. The Detroit Pistons with Joe Dumars, Isaiah Thomas, and the like. Could they have squeezed a three-peat out against that Lakers team that surprisingly beat Portland in '91 Eastern Conference Finals and went to the finals? Could they have won a third championship? They were beat up that year. It would have been very tough. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Lakers would have had home court advantage against them. I can't remember their exact record, but I don't think that they won 60 games. I think the Lakers won 58 games. I think Detroit won 52 games or something like that. That team was really beat up, so I don't know whether they would do it or not, but who knows? But these are just different things that I pondered recently, just thinking about whether this guy had never existed as far as an NBA player. Who knows what he'll have done? Maybe play baseball. He wasn't the talent in baseball that he was in basketball. Maybe he would just be this guy who we just considered a below average baseball player, never knowing what he would have done as a professional basketball player. And this just goes to show you that when you hear people criticize players because they won a championship, it's not often their fault. People have to remember that basketball is a team sport, and not one player wins a championship on his own. Now, only the true greats have a significant impact on the game to the point where they can be, at times, a deciding factor. Your Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's, your Wilt Chamberlains, your Michael Jordans. But you cannot blame these different players who I've named who haven't won championships, who didn't win championships. You can't blame them because one man stood in their way. And I also challenge anyone on this point I'm going to make at the end. If you take Karl Malone and put him in the NBA his rookie year in 1997, and you put Tim Duncan playing along Michael Jordan, I think Tim Duncan at best wins 1 championship. At best. Karl Malone would probably be seen as the greatest power forward of all time. He probably would have multiple championships. And the perception would have been different for both guys. Tim Duncan, a great, great player who underachieved as far as championships. And Karl Malone, a guy who's probably decorated with he'd probably have 3 or maybe even 4 championships of his own. And we be looking at these guys differently.